An experimental electrical therapy is giving some function back to people left paralyzed after a spinal cord injury.
As Skylar Henry shows us, this treatment uses a device that does not need to be surgically implanted.
Sharon Campbell was paralyzed from the shoulders down in 2014 after wrestling with a friend.
You can't feed yourself, you can't make it to the bathroom, you can't dress yourself, so it's very severe injury, life-changing is not putting it lightly whatsoever.
He's a quadriplegic and was among 60 people to take part in a clinical trial led by the University of Washington, testing a non-invasive electrical device. Unlike other devices, this one is placed outside the body rather than implanted and sends a strong electrical current to the spinal cord.
We've seen remarkable recovery when the stimulation is applied to the back of the neck after spinal cord injury. We've seen some individuals that could barely move their hands or grasp or lift an object immediately be able to grasp first light objects, then heavier objects.
Patients had weeks of intensive rehabilitation to prepare for the electrical stimulation treatment, which takes place over 12 weeks. Scientists say the device only works for patients who have maintained some neural activity.
They develop this strength and dexterity over a period of months as they practice with the stimulator, and then this appears to persist for many months afterwards.
Campbell says he's experiencing increased movement.
Changes with my dexterity, changes in grip strength. One of my big goals was just being able to reach across my body and help wash. So they sound like simple things, but they're very functional and very important. My daughter's birthday, tying a bunch of balloons and stuff, being able to do that, being able to give her the birthday party she wanted.
He's grateful for any improvement in his quality of life. Skylar Henry, CBS News.
Sharon was one of the patients in the study who was able to take the device home for a period of time.